Hello, everyone. My name is Wiljavian Dawson, and today we are here with Senya, lead organizer for Mohawk Valley Citizens Action, and then also we have Aaron. Hello, everyone.
Hi, how's it going? Yeah, it's let's see, official title is lead organizer of the Central New York chapter of Citizen Action.
Well, thank you so much, Senya, for joining us. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about advocacy. We're going to talk about what advocacy is and ways that you can advocate for yourself and for the community around you. So, we want to just take a couple of minutes to talk about you, Senya. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Senya. I've been in Utica for a few years. I am a community organizer. I am originally from Ghana. I was born in Ghana. I moved to the US with my family when I was pretty young, about 5 years old, and bounced around to a lot of different communities in the US while I was growing around, just as my parents moved around, looking for work and stuff. So I mean, I kind of get some all over the place, and I kind of got used to bouncing around. I guess I'm kind of a nomad. I like to move around from place to place. And as a political organizer, which I've been doing for about 6 years now, I have been in a bunch of different communities and places, doing work in Iowa, Virginia, Kentucky, Michigan, Georgia, and now here in Utica, New York.
Oh, that's good. What brought you to Utica?
So I was a political organizer, like working on campaigns, political campaigns. I started out working on Bernie's presidential campaign in 2020. And after the world ended, sort of with COVID, around March of that year, I was at home for a while. After the race dropped out, I sort of did a few other jobs um, in the same kind of work for different campaigns across like various states, like I was talking about. So I kind of wanted to switch from political campaign based organizing to more community based. And I knew some people with this organization, Citizen Action of New York, who um, sort of vouched for what they were doing and talked about it. I talked to them about what I was trying to get into. And so I decided that I would try to be a little bit more stable for a while, in terms of not jumping around, but settle down in community and see what kind of work could be done as a community organizer, basically.
No, that's good. And for the people that are listening to this, can you tell us what is Citizen Action?
Citizen Action, yeah, sure. They're a statewide nonprofit with chapters in a bunch of different cities across the state. So it's in an interesting position as an organization. A lot of nonprofits and things like that are more based in a particular city. And Citizen Action has like we do both statewide work in terms of trying to affect the budget, legislators in Albany, issues across the state as a whole. And also we do work individually in our chapters that's more like focused on the local communities that the chapters are based in. So we do a lot of we have a fairly broad range of issues that the entire organization works on here in Central New York. As a chapter, we do a lot with housing, childcare, and education in particular. And currently, we also get involved in things like the congressional, at this time, the congressional election.
That's very good. And you highlighted a vast array of civic engagement experience. Can you tell us why do you believe civic engagement is important?
Sure. I mean, I think civic engagement is it's so much more than it sounds. I think that's like a very like, I know what it's a very dry term for what like it really is. Civic engagement is really just like getting involved in your community and taking a stance, or not taking a stance, taking an active role in your community and the society around you. I think um in a lot of ways in America in this like current uh 2024, it's a very isolated and individualistic society with a lot of value placed on sort of those values as opposed to community, social development, and a society that takes care of people. So there's not like a lot of we don't have much of a what they call like a welfare state here. So I think to me, civic engagement is really the process of people like taking care of themselves and creating and advocating for the things that they need in their societies and their communities to make them better, to make them more sustainable, to make them safer for themselves and for their children, and all the things that we need pretty desperately in communities like Utica, but that we sometimes don't see the results of.
So just curious to know, like, what specifically got you into like activism, the activism role of civic engagement?
What I mean, like I said, I was actually not really on this track. I didn't plan on being an organizer. Um, I sort of got, life went a little sideways as it often does. I was working for Amazon, and I was kind of just, I don't know. I've always been very aware, I suppose. But I was very private in my, it was in my like my own awareness of what civic engagement was, or like getting involved was. And I kind of like I knew the way that I thought things should be, and I knew a lot of like the problems that I had, but I wasn't really aware of what you could like do about them. For some reason, I had like a lack of awareness of like what it was to be involved as like an organizer with a community trying to advocate for things and stuff like that. So I got the chance to, um, like I said, to work for the Bernie campaign, but that involved basically moving across the country and just trying like something completely new that I hadn't really done before. But basically, I wanted to get involved because I thought it was a like a strong moment, a strong possibility for things to change. And I thought that it's better to. I basically thought I wanted to practice like what I was preaching in terms of what I believe needed to happen. I thought that more people needed to um, sort of focus on mobilizing other people in their communities for change, as opposed to sort of the way we kind of get um, sort of the way that like I don't know, social media, just like retweeting something and moving on to the next thing, or like posting about something and moving on to the next thing, sort of like gets people to feel like they're participating, and also people don't really know how to get involved. um so yeah, I just kind of wanted to take the opportunity to talk to more people about the things that I believed, and get paid for it, and also at the same time, and see if I could help out, because I thought that I had the skill set to be able to be of help.
And what are like some types of activism in modern day today?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think activism is just taking an intentional like set of actions. That's what, activism, taking a set of actions in order to bring about a change in something that you believe is necessary. So and in fact, there's a lot of examples of activism. There's like racial justice activism. There's activism for climate change. There's activism for economic freedom. There's activism for ending genocide, for example, right? There's a lot of problems in society, and basically anything that people decide to come together on and work to bring about a change, I think qualifies as activism. There's various avenues of power, right? There's money, and power, and then there's like people power. And a lot of what we engage in as public advocates or as public activists trying to initiate social change is organizing people power and organizing the people who influence the legislators to show up, either going to Albany or in their own cities, making large media events, protests, demonstrations, walk-ins, bringing, calling their offices, organizing to get them out of office if they don't do what you want, threatening to replace like one of your legislative leaders with somebody who's actually going to listen to the people, saying if you don't listen to the things that we need, we're going to get you out of office, and organizing a campaign and like following through on that threat. These are various things that people do to because they're very serious about getting change done. So some of the longer term work was, for example, in like Ithaca, they've or in like Binghamton, they've managed to do a very good job of over the years flipping their common council, the people who represent the city, into people who are responsive to the community, into people who know that if they aren't responsive to the community, they're going to have challenges to their seats in like elections, or they're going to have bad press. They're going to have people in their face at every public meeting. They're going to have people from their district organized saying that we need you to do this for us. These are all strategies to try to actually either influence the people who are in power to listen to you, or get people who are more responsive to you to be in power, which is a lot of what we do. And then actually holding them accountable in terms of once they do get in power, it's not over. That's like a lot of the times people have an idea here that civic engagement sort of starts and ends with voting. And in this country, especially, we think of that like right now with the presidential election, people kind of show up and vote every 4 years and then tune out again. And what we try to get people to understand is that in those intervening years is where a lot of the decisions, a lot of the power happens. And there's often, when people tap back out after like a presidential election, that's when we see a lot of the reactionary elements get stronger, right? So I think understanding that civic engagement is really like a continual process of caring about your community, getting involved in your local organizations, getting involved in ways to make your local community better, and then extending that strength to, whatever larger issue you want to, like, it's like the strategy for really taking control of your local power infrastructure.
No, that's very good. Yeah, so it seems like activism and advocacy is really about making sure that people are aware of a certain issue that is going on in the community and coming together to let everyone know like what the solutions need to be to resolve those issues. So I want to move into talking about messaging and ways that like you could like speak out on an issue. So when it comes to framing your message to people, how do you like create a persuasive message to inform people about an issue going on here?
That's an interesting question. I think you want to think about you want to ask a few questions. You want to think about your audience, like who it is you're talking to. You want to ask like what message do you want them to get? What do you want them to leave with from whatever you're planning, whether it's an action or a demonstration? Like what do you want them to get out of it? And sort of working backward from that. And again, trying to really get clear on your goals in terms of what am I trying to get out of this? Is it that people know more about this particular issue? Is it that people know how to affect this particular issue? Sometimes people know about what's going on, but they don't know what to do about it. Or is it to do something more demonstrable, like a strike? Like, is it to stop um, something from happening? Is it to stop the work from going on, to demonstrate either your material power as like a union or something, or to engage in solidarity? So I think your message depends on who your audience is, what you want them to get out of what you're talking about, or what you're trying to achieve. I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit too vague. I'm trying to be very general in terms of like whatever you're talking about. But
Yeah. So of course it's about like if I was like, of course, there's an issue that is affecting like me and not just me, but also people around me. It's like a wide scale issue. It's not an isolated incident. And you want to like let more of your community members know, like, hey, this is a problem and we need to rally together to solve it. We need to go talk to our political leaders. We need to explain to them that this issue has to get solved or else it's going to get worse. They also have like demands. They demand that X, Y, and Z happen by the government. So I want to like ask you, how is it that like activists decide like what they want to put in their demands?
you come together and you decide as a group, and you try to be as clear as possible. The demands are discussed, shared, talked about, and then we put them out as a group. So they're decided upon democratically, basically.
Yeah, it sounds to me like I mean, not just citizen action, but there are similar platforms, but nevertheless, it is a platform where people already kind of have a common goal. They already have a common theme of what it is that they want to perform activism against or for. And then they would come together and they would unite and kind of collaborate with such organizations to kind of get the messaging across or get the goal to be achieved.
Right.
Is that
Well,
correct?
that's exactly, like, so that's part of the work and building of the community in the first place. Right? So like after this in about 20 minutes, I'm gonna have a phone bank where we just call people in Utica and talk to them about the issues that they are facing and care about in their lives and how they think. And we see what they care about and we see who is activated around certain issues. And then we say, hey, this is what we're doing. Are you interested? And so you can, that's how you sort of gather a group of people who are activated around particular issues. So I know that these people who I've talked to and who've talked about housing a lot care about housing a lot. I know these people talk to about getting better community programs for kids to do after school. Like that's what they're cared about. That's what they invest in. That's what they see as the biggest needs in their communities. So that then after, when something happens, or just as I'm setting up a committee meeting around this particular issue or that particular issue, I know who to go back to and reach out to, who's activated around this. So then the people who are working on this thing care about this thing and they're motivated to work on this thing because it's in their self-interest, right? So by coming together and working together, they can achieve a goal that works out for their benefit.
For sure. Are there any instances where you have opposing, let's say this group came to you about this one thing, but then you had someone else coming against whatever that person was coming to you or that group was coming to you about? Were there ever instances where you had to work with opposing groups to perform activism, or it usually just kind of smoothens and pans out?
No, absolutely not. It does not smooth out. You definitely have to work with people's you gotta work with people. You're always gonna have to work with people. And I think building coalitions is one of like the biggest parts of being able to be effective as an
Sure.
activist, because you're going to be gathering and talking to and work with people who care about what you care about, like I was just describing, but you're also going to be trying to work with other groups who are maybe more established who care about some other things, but still have solidarity with you, right? Because it's really solidarity is kind of like the name of the game in terms of activism, right? Like you have to engage in that a lot. So coalition building is definitely a patience required skill. And there's definitely people with different like views and stuff. So again, you try to remember and emphasize and talk about why you're there and to identify you want as again as much as possible, you want to be clear and direct about your goals so that there isn't confusion. So that if people do have an issue, maybe they know, hey, this isn't the group for me, or maybe I should take my issue somewhere else, or maybe I should form a committee so that there can be two groups working on these like similar but different goals, so that you don't have people butting heads or taking over and stuff like that. But you're always going to run into that. You try to establish democratic like principles and structures in place in terms of like voting on things, majority votes, in terms of not letting a particular person or group of people dominate the conversation, making sure you hear from voices who are quieter, and maybe not as inclined to dominate a room, just making sure you pay attention to things like that because you're working with people. So of course it's always going to be a bit of a delicate balance.
So what are some like I guess major issues that you see in the local area of Utica?
Yeah, you just got plenty of issues, like a lot of places in America. I mean, I think one of the things we hear people talk about a lot is more community investment, more community development, more things for like community centers, programs for options for kids to do after school programs and things of that sort that don't that maybe used to exist and that don't really exist anymore. We hear a lot from parents and people about their desire to see something like that.
I like the youth exodus, youth violence.
A lot about youth violence, a lot about gun violence. So that's yeah. I think that's the thing that a lot of people definitely care about a lot here. And it's I think one of those that the community programs, more things for kids to do is something that's been suggested a lot as like a solution for that, like an alternative solution. It's something that like we like at Citizen Action as an organization, that's something that like we believe in pretty heavily, like things that like we get public safety with more investment in our communities, not with more like policing, for example. Because we hear about gun violence, we hear about these issues a lot. But what we see from other examples across the country, from studies, from lots of research, like it's pretty clear that we get safer communities with more resources poured into those communities, as opposed to with more like patrols and policing and more investment in police budgets or something like that. So like the gun violence, but as like again, as a solution to that, we don't just want like administration coming in talking about public safety, and their response to public safety is we're going to flood the streets with cops because we know like what areas of the city gets policed more than others. We know what kind of people get policed more than others. We see what just happened as a result of more police interaction, and like what we want to see is like more investments in mental health and counselors or violence interruption programs as a solution to what we hear a lot of people complain about in the youth violence issue here. So
Oh yeah, I mean, another question I was going to ask, like, of course, like you mobilize together with groups of people to, of course, call attention to those issues that you just described earlier, and those are important issues. Like, let's suppose like you continue to speak out on those issues. And it takes like sometimes it doesn't like the progress doesn't immediately come like the next day. It does take some time. It does take more conversations with each other and with political leaders. And it really takes a lot of energy to do that. So how do you what are some ways that like activism groups can keep their morale up to know that they need to keep fighting for these issues and that there is like by working together, like you're continuing to achieve like your end goal here. So how do you keep morale up essentially?
Yeah, that's a bit. I mean, so in many like um in many ways, right? Because it's like a fight, and very often it is a long fight, and it can be. It's not a guaranteed wins all of the time, right? But you want to be as strategic as possible when you're getting involved in these things, right? So depending on what your goal is, look at other examples and be clear about what success is and how that looks and how long that might take to achieve, and what are your like benchmarks in between that you can take as as positive steps towards that goal, and think about how you want to celebrate those wins and celebrate that achievement. And yeah, you definitely want to, when you're bringing together a group of people, you want to make sure you keep it fun for people, right? That's why people want to come back, because a lot of times it's not just like oh, they are in need of something and they need to come together and work on it, but it's also like people like to experience that sense of community and camaraderie with each other, and like the process of building something, of winning something, or just for working for something in itself is like is beneficial for morale and for that sense of belonging to the community. But you also want to make sure you plan for like small wins, right? For like easily achievable wins. You want to make sure you're picking some things that are, especially, you want to consider who you're working with. Like if it's like a experienced group of like hardcore organizers who know like what kind of a fight they're in for, and how intense the opposition is going to be, that's one thing. But if it's like a newer group of people that maybe not be as ready for how long of a fight some of these things mean, just like keep that in mind as you're planning out your goals and what you're going to look like as for wins, and like how you're going to celebrate people's achievements in the midst of that. And because people, I think it's easy to, it should, well, yeah, it can be easy to miss, but it should be easy to point out how like the people you're working with like grow as you're taking on something like this. If you're people who have not done something like, speaking up in front of their city's leadership, or talking to their city's leadership individually, or talking to their city's leadership with a group of people behind them, who are saying the same thing, who got their back. Like that's a very powerful feeling, and people can really grow through that. And that should be something that you pay attention to and that you celebrate, and that you keep in mind as you're working for your goal.
Yeah, and in addition to like those small wins, like as you continue to win and you achieve your end goal, uh, what happens next? Like, do you like continue to be together as a group? Do you like what usually happens after you achieved your end goal, you achieve your win?
Yeah. What usually happens is people disperse. But what we want to happen is to definitely move them into like something else that's larger, and that's like a continual, maybe something that's related. And so it depends. Like I think sometimes people disperse. Sometimes people are very motivated to like attack the next thing after they've gotten the win. They're just like, all right, let's keep going like with this. Like we got this, but it's not over yet. And I think that's definitely something that we try to emphasize, that like, let's say like once you win a particular piece of legislation, or you get somebody in public office that you wanted to, or you get some outcome that you wanted to, it's not over yet, right? Like that's just the beginning. Now it's the implementation of that and the execution of that, and making sure that that effort doesn't get sidetracked or taken over or canceled or abandoned or blah blah blah. So it's often you can shift from the immediate fight of like getting something passed to, all right, now we're gonna keep, let's say, being in this politician's lobby room every month ready to talk to them about, all right, we're happy you did that, but now what's next? Are you following through with it? Are you blah blah blah? So I think you would, yeah, you always want to, because there's so, I mean, hey, there's a lot of stuff, right? And there's a lot of interconnectedness between all the issues that we do care about as a society. So it's always it's not too hard to point out another thing that needs to be worked on.
All right, that's good. Thank you so much for explaining all that. And as we conclude this episode, we want to just ask, is there any final advice or message that you'd like to give to people about activism?
About I think just to get involved. I think that activism can just it's just look you just get involved with a local organization that's doing something. I think it's really the sense of community that is often motivating to go back and do something else. And it's like a real strong opportunity to build strong relationships with people, with your community, to get like a sense of purpose and pride about like what you're doing on a more engaged level as a society, as like a neighbor, as like somebody who's taking part in this, social fabric we call humanity. So again, been getting involved with citizen with organizations like Citizen Action. There's other organizations in the city, Utica Royalties, the Midtown Utica Center. Like, there's plenty of places that host and like try to organize events for people. The Cornerstone Church, which is where our office is based out of. They do, they feed the homeless population every week. They do a lot of other things. They have like art classes for things that's available for the public. There's so many ways to get involved. So just yeah, come on down.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Today we had Senya from Central New York chapter of Citizen Action on, and he talked to us about activism and how to be civically engaged utilizing the channel of activism. And again, my name is Will Javian Dawson, and
Aaron Woodman.
And I'm Senya Bequia.
all right, thank you all for tuning in and have a great rest of your week.